Thank you so much for clicking on my video. I really do appreciate it. And today we're going to get into some technical analysis for the SPY Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, NVIDIA, and AMD. We're even going to throw Meta in there and give you those weekly ranges for Meta this week. And as always, we're going to give you also, seem like you guys really like this, we're going to give you those daily ranges for the SPY and the Qs all week long this week. Okay, so be coming back every single night for that info. But the big deal here is this week could really surprise you, and Monday could really surprise you as well. And that's why we really need to start jumping into the SPY. The reason that we really want to pay attention to this week, that we got a few things to pay attention to here with the SPY. We're outside of that monthly range. 68% of the time we do land back within these yellow lines here, and this is the top side. So you do have just a few days left to land back in that zone, and you do it 68% of the time. So I'm expecting this week to be a little bit up and down, a little bit crazier. Now, the big thing here is we get GDP, which actually could come in positive and cause positivity in the market, but PCE comes out the next day, and maybe something like this happens. This is where the CPI actually ticked up, and if the PCE ticks up as well, we might see some fear come into this market. But the big thing you came for today, the weekly expected move for the SPY, 514.56 to the upside and 501.06 to the downside, right by that monthly expected move. If we do get towards that, we can use that as some support to jump a little bit higher. So if you get outside of this early on in the week, look for that to bounce back up. 68% chance you land in this zone. Same thing goes the other direction. So something that would make a lot of sense going into Monday with our ranges being 510.22 to the upside and 505.40 to the downside would be if this wanted to consolidate, come down even a little bit into this area. Now, this would be a little bit dangerous because you would be completing some kind of cup, and if you get a handle, we can go fill this gap, but that would take us outside of this weekly zone. So really, if there is some kind of pullback, I'm seeing if this is able to hold as some support at this point at the bottom side of that daily expected move, and then see if we can get that push higher. Now, if we get to the upside of this throughout the week, and we do see that 30-minute divergence up here, look out, because we might be right next to PCE, and if PCE ticks up, we could actually see a pretty good sell-off. The Qs, we are really going to want to pay attention to PCE and GDP, but mostly PCE because that can really affect how those rates work, and the rates really affect these tech stocks. The weekly expected move to the upside, 444.73 to the upside, and we do have 428.75 to the downside. So we do have a wider range on the Qs. We've been talking about this since we started doing these weekly ranges, how the Qs can really, when we have stuff related to rates and a little bit of volatility in the AI stocks, we can see wider ranges. So there's a bigger expected move for the Qs at this point. The big thing with the Qs that's different from the SPY, we're not outside of that monthly range at this point. If we wanted to, we could actually complete this cup, maybe create a handle and head a little bit lower, fill this gap, and it would make total sense for us to buy back up into here if it's early on in the week. Now, one thing that I'm open to is if we get down to this on Monday, which would be our daily expected moves, 439.63 to the upside and 433.85 to the downside, we'll be in a good area for a bounce. So we really have to pay attention. If we get down to this area, are we getting some kind of handle early on in the day or later on in the day that could lead to us falling down with this kind of cup completing? Or is it going to reach down to get some buyers and then buy back up to this level, and maybe we get some kind of little head and shoulders in here? So there's really a couple of scenarios that could happen. But if this scenario happened where we do dip down lower and then curl back up, if we get towards that weekly expected move, look for some kind of divergence here on the 30-minute chart. Because if we do get that 30-minute divergence, we'd be outside of the monthly expected move. And if we get outside of the weekly, good chance that we're going to see that come down into there with some selling. Now, make sure we're paying attention. We trade like water. We just look at those rocks in front of us and go with the stream. So pay attention to what the PCE actually comes out as and how the market is reacting to that news. But it's really looking like we could consolidate just a little bit more before we actually see another pop higher. If we go higher early on in the day and we want to try to test this high, we actually could see this start breaking down to the lower side of that weekly expected move. Apple here still has a chance completing this big cup in here, big cup all the way over here. A lot of cupping going on. This could be some kind of big handle. And I know I told you guys, this is the trade that I was taking. It has a 2-hour divergence, 30-minute divergence, and almost a daily divergence at the same time, which is something I really, really like. But the thing is, this was taking way too long to gain some steam. We started to see it sell off. So I don't play around with those kinds of things. If I'm not seeing strength in a move, I'm out. So I took my 10% and I ran. Now we're coming back down, but you'll notice we're still near that positive territory. So if we want to see that positivity early on in the week, little bit of bullishness come in, we can see that curl up. If this curls up, good chance we're going to test this high, most likely get into this zone we've been talking about here. So if you want the weekly ranges for Apple to see if that's somewhere around this zone, you can go down in the Patreon in the link in my description. If we wanted to break down to further levels, it's really not looking like that. This is a pretty important trend line, so it's kind of hard to break through. But if we do gap or something like that, we could be testing this low before we actually see a move higher. At this point, though, you got the MACD close to positive territory. If this thing wants to curl back up, I could really see that positivity coming back in this market for Apple. Amazon's one thing we were talking about because we overall just stated how we're coming up into these resistances here and we're creating some divergences. Okay, so really for Amazon here, we talked about this possibly going up and touching the point between these highs. That's really where I could see Amazon going if we got bullish. Now, if we did get bearish, I'd really pay attention to, or if we saw some selling, really pay attention to this gap here. We've held up at this level before, right? So really pay attention to this base down here. If we start to break through that, there's not a lot holding us up, so we could head down to something like 159, 160 pretty quick. But I do think we have the chance, if we get a little bit more maybe consolidation here just for some time to move sideways, we could actually see this curl up one more time and create some kind of divergence up here on the 30-minute. Now, I did just want to notify you on the 2-hour, you still have this divergence in play. Now, this could drag out for a little bit. We could see a move higher before this actually confirms, but you do have a triple divergence on Amazon, on the MACD, on the RSI at the same time. So it's a chance to be like, hey, this is a point where I want to take profit, maybe look for some kind of pullback, maybe look for some kind of correction that's going to pull back a little further. There's just a lot of things up here where people are super euphoric, where you have to be like, okay, I'm seeing some signals that tell me the momentum is dying out, and therefore I could possibly see a pullback or some kind of rug pull with some big news of the PCE. Tesla is something we were talking about on the live video. We found some great trades down here for Tesla, but we want to see that strength, which is something similar to what I was saying with Apple. When I don't see that huge strength, actually Tesla was a little bit stronger than Apple, honestly. We saw some good buying up with those divergences on the 2-hour we had here. It was a good 1, 2, 3 ABC trade. But right now we're seeing almost something else happen where we might have got some flagging going on and we're actually going to drop to lower levels. So we do see a little bit of structure in here that could break us down further. We talked about this live because we can get to negative territory pretty quick on this MACD. So right now you are in negative territory. It's really still pointing down. We don't have any, pink bars. They're red bars at this point. We could head lower. Really want to see some positivity come in right around this 190.10 again in order for us to keep being bullish. If we start to break down below that, you're kind of opening the door for some things to cross over, right? You're opening the door for the 2-hour to get into negative territory, and you're also opening the door for this daily to turn back around, right? This is nowhere near positive territory yet. It needs a few more days to get there. So if we don't get positivity soon, we could still be continuing this negative trend here, and it might take a little bit more time to get some kind of bounce out of Tesla. So it's just Tesla's not looking the strongest going into Monday, but we have to be open to it. If it starts to curl over into positive territory, there's going to be some positivity. But if we remain down there in negative territory, watch out because we could curl over this daily MACD and we could see some more pain. NVIDIA, we did a really good job with. Yes, I do not trade around earnings, but we did notice that 15-minute divergence down in here. We gap higher, and we gapped exactly where we were talking about live and in the video, where we needed to hold above. We need to hold above this 750 because of those calls. And I'm just going to tell you right now, the calls at the number 800 have gone insane. So if we see any kind of selling below 800, maybe even dropping below 750, we could really see people start to take profit fast because people are going to go well underwater because those expire this Friday. So if people are seeing the price of NVIDIA stay below 800 for quite some time, we actually could see people selling their options, trying to really make up for the losses that they're experiencing. So the cool part about the daily range from Friday, we saw that come up. We actually came up right into, guess what? 825 was the weekly expected move. So if you don't think those weekly expected moves are powerful, guess what? We actually hit a high here of 823.94. If you just knew, hey, 825 is a place where I need to be very, very careful, guess what? Right here, we mentioned it a bunch, 820 to 830 is going to be where you want to possibly be thinking about, hey, this is all the options market probably has priced in. Maybe I need to take profit here. This was a great time to take profit. You guys were here live to watch it with me. It was a lot of fun. Now we have to see, is this going to continue to move sideways, maybe come down into that 750 level. Let me erase these daily expected moves here, but maybe come down into that 750 level for a test. But if we start to see this hold below 800 for quite some time throughout the week, we can see people start to really go underwater and maybe pull out of those trades. So it's something to pay attention to. We could actually see some selling in NVIDIA this week. But if we do see that positivity, you're just inviting more people. If people start to really try to short NVIDIA to the level that we have calls, then we can really see that positivity. We can see some kind of squeeze. But at this point, I'm really not seeing anything that could take NVIDIA higher. But if it does want to make a move higher, I'm going to be open to that, because if we get some consolidation here, all I have to do is watch this 30 minutes, see it curl back up, and know, hey, if this came down to 750 and curls back up, curls over on that MACD, we can see more positivity out of NVIDIA. Really want to pay attention to this week, because we do have that big news. Now, something on the daily with NVIDIA I wanted to point out to you guys was the fact that we're creating a divergence right now. We actually do have a divergence on the daily side. If we want to roll over right now, if we want to roll over in the next couple of days, get this MACD to cross, you actually have a little divergence here on the RSI, on the MACD at the same time. So it's just a time to say, hey, maybe I want to be a little cautious with this and stay away from NVIDIA for a little bit, because I'm seeing a couple of these signals. Being patient is always a good thing. Maybe you'd be more comfortable down here at this gap, right? People bought right here around that 680 price point. If we can get down to there one more time, that might be a place where you could start to think about taking a trade. But for me right now, outside the Bollinger Band, red candle, we got a divergence up here that possibly could confirm. We got the divergence on the RSI. It's just not looking good from an investment standpoint. AMD, we were talking about this possibly getting a bunch of positivity to curl up this MACD and see a really strong move, but now we're seeing that almost like a fake out with the NVIDIA earnings. Now, this could be people pulling out of AMD to get into NVIDIA, so we'll have to see if people sell out of NVIDIA. Do they put it into AMD? That stuff can happen. But really, this week, I'm going to pay attention if this MACD curls up. We see some positivity. Pay attention to my weekly expected move, just because we could see this thing drop off pretty quick if we start to create a divergence, and then we see that negative territory get into down here, because this divergence would get us a little bit closer. PCE will be a very, very, very important thing this week. Going into the shorter time frames, on the 30-minute here, we see this price action, how we're kind of this price action on the MACD, we're able to stay into positive territory. So if this wants to curl up, we can see that positivity, but right now we're getting some sort of flagging. Maybe we want to fill that gap before that happens. So I really want to pay attention to that. I can tell you that the gap here is going to be outside of that weekly expected move for AMD that I give out on Patreon. So if we get down there pretty quick, I'm going to look and see if there's some positivity that can come in around this area to get us back into that weekly range. That's really all I'm paying attention to on AMD. It's not looking the best, and the last thing was the 2-hour, actually. The 2-hour was something we were paying attention to, seeing if a big divergence could form, and really the 4-hour might be a better one, right? We see this right next to that negative territory. We're seeing that selling come in at the high again. If this wants to go into negative territory on the 4-hour, break through this base, we can see that negative trend begin. The last one I wanted to point out to you guys was Meta, and I'm actually going to give you the weekly range. So if you stayed for the last part of this video, first of all, thank you so much for staying for the end of this video. We're going to go into a few other things like the VIX and things like that. But I really do appreciate you watching this video to the full length here. It's very, very cool. Appreciate you coming by, and here's those weekly ranges as a reward here. 502.42 to the upside, 465.56 to the downside. The reason I'm showing you this right now is because even if we do get that positivity, we do have a triple divergence as of right now. So if we do want to dip to lower levels, then get another push higher and dip again, once you break through this level right here, it's going to be a little sketch, because you do have a 2-hour divergence right next to negative territory, and you have a daily that looks like it already crossed, right? So this already crossed. If we want to create some kind of small daily divergence, that would be maybe a bullish thing. If we want to get a couple of days to get outside of this, look for that daily divergence up here. But you do have 2-hour divergences along these highs, and this could easily drop off. So really, if you just use the Bollinger Bands here, your profit to the upside might be 519.29, and to the downside, you're looking at a drop down to 386. Okay, so right in this first pocket of price action, just pretty much where this gap fill is. That's why it's just a good time to be a little bit cautious, but I felt Meta was a very, very good thing to show you how this 2-hour divergence is looking pretty good, because it's right next to that negative territory. The VIX on the hourly, we're overall seeing a bunch of little flat divergences down here. It wouldn't surprise me if we got a pop of volatility and then we actually came back down. This would actually give us a more defined divergence here. So I wouldn't be surprised at all for us to get a little pop in volatility here, and then we actually maybe even come down and fill this gap before PCE. So that's really what I'm paying attention to on the VIX. As far as the daily scale goes, right, we're seeing that drop off. We're starting to see a lot of gaps in this VIX, which the VIX likes to fill its gaps. So if it comes and fills this one down here, is it going to immediately come up and we're going to see that spike in volatility? The only thing I'm really paying attention to the bullish side, if we're still going to blow off top to the upside, is if this MACD actually does cross over and get into negative territory. If that starts to go negative, we may be seeing a blow off top in a lot of different stocks, not just NVIDIA, SMCI, and AMD. So the main takeaway that you should have for Monday is to expect some fluctuation this week, to really expect some price to go up and down throughout the week, because we do have some profit taking that could take place on Monday. We have GDP that's going to come out, and then right after that we're going to have PCE that comes out, and CPI was higher, so maybe PCI comes out higher for the market. There's just a lot to pay attention to, and that's why we're going to utilize those daily risk ranges. So come back every night for those daily risk ranges. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I wish you all the luck in the world trading this week, and I hope you have a great night. Peace.